The story begins in the depths of a dark and damp cave. Shrill screams echoed off the walls as the goblins celebrated the death of their leader. A goblin clutching the weapon of the former chief proclaimed himself the new leader. His eyes shone with a mix of triumph and madness as he brandished the stolen weapon, reveling in his newly acquired authority. However, his comrade had a different opinion. He believed that since he had done most of the work, he should be the leader. Driven by jealousy and anger, he lunged at his companion and bit his nose hard. The cave filled with the sounds of their struggle. The screams grew louder as other goblins gathered around, watching the fight with glee and betting on who would win. For them, this was an exciting pastime. Their simple minds found great entertainment in the chaos of battle. However, amidst the excitement, there was something that thrilled them even more than a fight. They remembered that they still had a prey to satisfy their desires. The former leader had not laid his hands on her, which made the goblins' eyes shine with anticipation. They began murmuring among themselves, planning to search for her and claim her for themselves, but others hesitated. The goblin guarding the prey had returned and was different from the others. Unlike the others, who used simple cloths to cover their lower regions, this one was covered with rags that concealed most of his body. His appearance was intimidating, not only because of his attire but also because he stood out, covering himself like a human. Despite his intimidating presence, he was alone, with no leader to guide them. They simply followed their basic instincts and their desire for flesh. So, they watched the strange goblin dumbly, trying to discern his next move, suspecting that he knew where the prey was. Thus, it was wise to follow him closely and seize the prey when the opportunity arose. But some goblins suggested waiting a little longer, as some of their tougher members had already advanced to find the prey. They planned to let the strange goblin discover the prey first and face a fight, then take advantage of the chaos to kill him and the others, finally claiming the prey for themselves. But they did not realize that the strange goblin was listening to their conversation. His ears perked up, and instead of loitering and walking slowly, he decided to run towards where the girl was. His sudden sprint allowed him to lose the goblins following him, but he encountered another problem upon arrival. As he feared, the goblins were all armed, ready to violate her. The girl pleaded for help with wide-open eyes of fear, but the largest goblin of the group stepped forward to confront the strange goblin, as he refused to allow anyone to prevent him from enjoying his good time, especially with the leader already dead. And as the strongest goblin of the group, he felt entitled to claim the prey first. But the strange goblin did not care about any of that. He was determined to protect the girl he had been guarding. Seeing his determination, the large goblin and his cronies decided to attack him all at once. Outnumbered, the strange goblin was quickly overwhelmed by the ferocity of their assault. Despite the odds, he knew he could not let this be the end. Seeking an opening, he seized the moment and wasted no time in killing the largest goblin of the group. The others froze in shock, never expecting a goblin to wield a weapon as sharp and deadly as that of a human. With this, fear immediately settled in their minds. The sight of their fallen leader so quickly and brutally made them realize they were outmatched. The remaining goblins fled the scene, but not without shouting threats, promising to return with reinforcements to finish him off. And now that the other goblins had fled, the strange goblin finally caught his breath. He tried to calm himself, knowing that more battles were on the horizon. This was just the beginning of the hellish day that was about to unfold. As he took a moment to recover, the pink-haired woman named Kelia thanked him once again. This was not the first time he had saved her, nor would it be the last. She had come to realize that he was different from the other goblins, as he had never harmed her in any way. So she tried to help him as much as she could. Although it was true that a goblin would never protect a human, there was a deeper reason for his actions. The strange goblin was different because he had been human too. A few days ago, Lin Tian had died in a horrific accident, but he did not expect that instead of meeting God after being hit by a garbage truck, he would be transported to another world with a system. Although he had a system, it had not yet fully activated. Apart from seeing some statistics, it did not seem to have any other function, making it practically useless. Despite this, Lin Tian had not been idle in these last few days. According to what Kelia had told him, he had come to understand a little of this new world. This world created by gods was full of various powerful monsters, and humans had made a place for themselves on this continent through sheer strength. Unfortunately, the goblin he was reincarnated into was the weakest and dirtiest monster in this world. Under such circumstances, his stats were incredibly low, even among goblins. He could be easily killed with a total combat power of only 30. Fortunately, his name had not changed. It was still Linen, which provided him a small comfort, but there was a way to become stronger in this place, and it was through mating with these girls. In this harsh reality, goblins had the ability to become stronger through constant mating and reproduction. However, they had no females of their own, so, to reproduce, they could only mate with other female creatures. That's why goblins constantly raided and kidnapped women. But Lin Tian had been human, and doing such things went completely against his beliefs. So that method of becoming stronger was off the table. Yet, with his beliefs, he found himself in a state of worry as he was trying to think of other ways to increase his strength. He knew very well that the other goblins would definitely come back to attack them, but it seemed he was at a dead end. Noticing his worried expression, Kelia tried to lighten the mood. She assured him not to worry, saying that after spending these days together, she understood him better. She knew he was different from the other goblins, and that he really didn't want to live among them. With a hopeful smile, she promised that when the Night Order came to rescue her, she would tell them how he had saved her, and there was nothing to worry about since she believed the Night Order was always fair and just. They would definitely agree to let him live in the village. With her optimism and the stories she shared about the sacred Night Order, Lin Tian believed her, which also ignited optimism in him. So he began to think that even if the system couldn't activate immediately, if he could hold out until the humans came to rescue them and gain their protection, he could survive. Then he could slowly figure out how to fully activate his system. But things weren't going to be as easy as Lin Tian had hoped, as the cry of an approaching goblin shattered the brief moment of peace. Without hesitation, he ordered Kelia to hide. She obeyed without hesitation, disappearing. In the shadows, as expected, a goblin appeared, but it seemed to be alone. Despite being alone, this goblin had the same agenda. Desperately, it ran towards them with frenetic energy, revealing that a human had appeared, killing the others. Believing that strength was the only way to avoid death, the goblin frantically ran to find Kelia, to become strong. However, its reckless charge made it an easy target for Lin Tian, who quickly killed the goblin on the spot. With the immediate threat neutralized, Lin Tian quickly informed Kelia that humans were here to rescue her. Immediately, Kelia's face lit up with joy. Assuming it was the Holy Order, Kelia wasted no time and hurried to find them with a heart full of hope and excitement. Lin Tian watched her as she moved away, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The arrival of the Holy Order could mean salvation for Kelia, possibly an opportunity for him to prove his worth. However, his progress was abruptly interrupted when he sensed an enormous aura being released. The intensity of the power made the cave tremble. It turned out to emanate from a human who effortlessly dealt with the goblins with a single strike. Although he didn't need to exert much effort with those beings, he was clearly venting his fury on the foul creatures that had dared to tear his Holy Order uniform. Lin Tian stood there, watching in awe and disbelief. This level 25 warrior named Looter exuded an overwhelming presence. What surprised Lin Tian even more was when he used his evaluation ability on Looter and discovered that his total combat power was 400. It was the highest statistic Lin Tian had seen since he arrived in this world, making him wonder if Looter was truly human. As Lin Tian stood still, marveling at how humans effortlessly handled the goblins, Kelia excitedly approached Commander Looter, thrilled to finally see another human. However, Lin Tian quickly noticed that Looter raised his sword to attack Kelia. With quick reflexes, he managed to push her aside just in time. Though it was a rough move, he saved Kelia from the deadly blow. Still, the sudden attack left Lin Tian perplexed. Weren't these sacred knights supposed to rescue people? He wondered why they were attacking Kelia. He realized that perhaps the darkness of the cave had made Looter mistake her for a goblin. It seemed this was the case since Looter angrily called them goblins and expressed his disdain that a goblin had dodged his attack. With this, Kelia quickly tried to clarify the misunderstanding, explaining who she was, but Looter simply told her to shut up. That he already knew it was her, but believed she had been dishonored by the goblins, and might even be carrying a goblin spawn, so it was ridiculous for someone as filthy as her to expect mercy from him. It would be better if she went to repent for her sins before the Great Holy Mother immediately, Kelia pleaded, insisting that although she had been captured, she had not been dishonored by the goblins. She pointed to Lin Tian, explaining that he had protected her. Unfortunately, Looter was a narrow-minded person who didn't believe anything she said, and the idea that a goblin had saved her and was not hostile towards humans was beyond his comprehension. He even felt insulted, thinking that Kelia was taking him for a fool. So he raised his sword to attack once more, and advised her to make her stories more believable if she was going to lie. Lin Tian couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly. With no other option, he intervened without hesitation, pushing Kelia aside and confronting Lear himself. He hoped to buy enough time for Kelia to escape. Unexpectedly, before Looter's sword could reach him, a magical glow appeared out of nowhere, protecting Lin Tian from the attack. This powerful spell came from a woman dressed in white, whose aura exuded holiness and authority. She wore a veil, and her presence immediately stopped Looter while she asked him to wait, expressing her interest in this strange goblin. After Looter stepped aside, it was revealed that this woman was none other than the holy maiden, Ephraia. Seizing the opportunity, Kelia crawled over and called out to the holy maiden, begging her to save him. Ephraia helped Kelia to her feet and handed her over to the same man who had tried to kill her moments before. She then turned her attention to Lin Tian and asked if he could understand her words. Lin Tian realized the gravity of the situation. He understood that Ephraia, the holy maiden and spokesperson of the temple, might be his only hope of getting out of this place alive. So he snapped out of his shock and quickly responded that he could understand her. He took a breath and continued, revealing that he was not a monster from this world, that he used to be human but had become this due to an accident, and that he could explain everything if she took him with her. Ephraya's eyes narrowed slightly at this unexpected event. Goblins were generally stupid and vile creatures. They couldn't speak or think fluently. However, this goblin could speak, even if it talked about stories they didn't understand, and it seemed smarter than others. This rarity made them wonder if it could be a gift from the Holy Mother. So the Holy Maiden turned to Kelia and asked for confirmation that this goblin had indeed not harmed her, to which Kelia gladly confirmed. Not only had he not harmed her, but he had also protected her from other goblins and given her food. This was enough confirmation for Ephraia, and recognizing the goblin's uniqueness, she decided to take him back first and study him thoroughly before making any decisions. This delighted Kelia, as she had fulfilled her promise to the goblin. Ephraia then turned to Lin Tian and asked if he was willing to join them, and knowing that staying meant certain death, he immediately replied that he was willing. With a snap of her fingers, Ephraia quickly broke the barrier holding Lin Tian, then ordered everyone to prepare to leave. Finally, things seemed to be looking up for Lin Tian, as he was now with someone who could listen to reason and felt a sense of security about his future. So he immediately approached Ephraia to express his gratitude, promising that he would repay her properly. But upon closer inspection of her countenance, he noticed a malicious smile that took him by surprise, and the next sound he heard was one he found all too familiar, the repugnant noise of metal piercing flesh. He instantly knew what had happened, but he was still in denial when he turned around. His fears were confirmed. Kelia had been killed without a second thought, her once vibrant body now lifeless and cold on the ground. Lin Tian was stunned, unable to move. The shock was too overwhelming. Just when he thought things were improving, it turned out to be a cruel lie. He stood there, motionless, trying to convince himself that this was a nightmare, a cruel trick of his mind. But the voice of the woman he had thought was his holy savior shattered any hope he had left. Her malicious laughter echoed in the cave, mocking the goblin, telling him that when they returned, he better pay her well, revealing her true nature as a sadistic monster who enjoyed his helpless reaction. Lin Tian was truly helpless, shaken to the core as his fragile reality crumbled before his eyes. A week had passed, and in the middle of the village, the bell rang loudly, summoning everyone to gather. The villagers knew that the influential people from the temple had something important to announce. As they gathered, tension filled the air, and a sense of anticipation took hold of the crowd. An official from the temple stepped forward and addressed the villagers, gathering them and saying that this goblin incursion had caused great damage to Brickton. The goblins used despicable attacks to massacre 30 residents of their village, intensifying the emotions of the villagers. Their pain and anger were palpable, but it was a reasonable reaction given the loss of so many lives at the hands of these vile creatures. However, what was not natural was the way the temple was using these emotions to promote its own agenda. The official continued praising the temple's actions, as the Holy Order, in the name of the temple, had purged these goblins and avenged the harmed villagers. After that, the Holy Maiden Ya stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. With a calm and authoritative voice, Ephraia urged everyone to continue praying devoutly to the temple, assuring them that the institution would always protect its faithful followers. Her words instantly convinced everyone in the village, even those who were previously skeptical, now found themselves praising the holy temple. The faith of the villagers was rekindled, and they looked to the temple with renewed devotion and trust. A few moments later, the Holy Maiden Fra returned to her quarters, celebrating the success of the sermon. It was no surprise since these villagers were as foolish as ever. Now they would pray with more devotion and offer more tributes. Her celebration was abruptly interrupted by someone calling her name. Turning toward the voice, she saw the same goblin from before. Lin Tian had just regained consciousness and looked like he had been through hell. Horrific scars covered his body, and one of his eyes had been gouged out. There was fierce anger in his eyes as he called out to Ephraia repeatedly, but she paid no attention to his words. Instead, a twisted smile appeared on her lips as she admired his resilience. With such strong vitality, it was no wonder the temple couldn't eradicate the goblins from the continent. But now that Lin Tian had regained consciousness, Effray was excited to see how the poison would affect the goblins this time. This made Lin Tian grit his teeth. It was the same thing over and over again. It wasn't about research. It was simply her perverse way of satisfying her sadistic nature. With accumulated rage, he couldn't control himself and lashed out at Effray once more, accusing her of deceiving him, deceiving everyone, and killing Kelia. He then questioned whether this was truly the holy order that Fra was so proud of, if this was their idea of human justice, because if it was, then they were no different from the goblins they despised. But his challenge was quickly met with brutality. Effray silenced him by forcefully driving a stick into his mouth. Now silenced, she mocked him, questioning how a weak and despicable creature like him, a lustful goblin, dared to question human justice. She claimed that Kelia had been enchanted by him, and dared to speak for him. That was a betrayal of humanity and the Holy Order. Thus her death was her ultimate loyalty, and goblins were nothing more than vermin on this continent. For the Holy Maiden to even speak to him was a great favor, so he should be grateful and use his small, disgusting body to contribute to human and Holy Order experiments. With that, the torture continued. He endured it all, unable to do anything. The agony was incessant and unending. Even when he fell unconscious, he was quickly awakened by the next wave of pain. Through the torment, Lin Tian wondered if he was really going to die there, so unwilling and helpless. But there was no one he could blame but himself. It was all his fault. He had been too naive. Reincarnated from a human to a low-level goblin, he had retained human compassion, thinking they were just and kind. Conscience and naivety were his most fatal mistakes. After being taken back to the human village, Lutter and Freya had tortured and toyed with him in every possible way. Never believing a word he said, they sadistically enjoyed it. It didn't last long, eventually being tortured to death by a sadistic woman. The only wish that kept him going until his grave was that if he could do it again, he would never trust humans. If he could do it again, he would crush their bones and drain their blood. But that was only if he could live again. He asked the system what the options of yes and no represent, and the system quickly informed him that if he chose no, his soul would dissipate and die completely, and if he chose yes, he would reserve his current memory and the system, and be sent back to the Goblin Cave a week ago. The idea of retaining his memory and going back a week had the greatest impact on him, instantly bringing a smile to his face. This was an opportunity for revenge. He would make Lutter and Effray pay for what they had done to him and Aquila. So, without a moment of doubt, he chose the yes option, with a determined smile on his face. As soon as he made his decision, a wave of life force began transferring to him, initiating the Goblin Life 2.0. But this time, there was a different gleam in his eyes, the eyes of a being driven solely by revenge. And just when he thought things couldn't get better, the system added an extra surprise. Because it was now Goblin Life 2.0, it was inclined to help him survive a little longer, so the system had slightly strengthened him, which made him smile since, although it was just a little, he wouldn't complain as it was better than nothing. And with that, he was back in his former body. But before he could start moving, the system appeared once more, warning him that although he had been reborn, the danger was not over. The human order was about to catch up with him, and if he died again, the system wouldn't be able to revive him. But this didn't surprise him as it was to be expected. Reincarnating once was already a miracle. Now he was on high alert with the order about to arrive. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. He immediately asked the system what he could do, which led the system to explain that it was called the Goblin Life Simulation System. The host could simulate his life with the system to foresee future events. Each choice he made would lead to different outcomes, and each simulation would take 24 hours. After finishing, he would earn points with each simulation that could be exchanged for items. This made him smile, as he realized it meant he could see the future. Such a powerful system, and it would be a crime not to use it to the fullest. So he immediately began the life simulation. The system showed him the current scenario, escaping from the Goblin Cave. The Goblin Cave he was in had been discovered by the Holy Knight Lutter. To escape the Holy Knight Lutter, he needed to make a critical decision. His first option was to warn his goblin companions and join forces to face Lutter and his men with a reward of 10 points, or abandon the other goblins and escape with a reward of 5 points, or hide in the cave and pray that Lutter and his men wouldn't find him, which would give him 0 points. Although there were 3 options, he was sure that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't match Lutter alone. Only escaping could save him. With this realization, he decided to simulate it first, and choose the option with the highest reward, knowing that if he could trade for a weapon, his chances of defeating his enemies with a surprise attack would increase. As he expected, relying on the goblins here was impossible for survival. Even when he led the goblins in a desperate battle against the Holy Knight Lutter, the enormous difference in strength meant they were still annihilated by Lutter and his men. However, he earned the points he needed, so he immediately opened the exchange shop. To his surprise, there were so many weapons to choose from, from short blades to long swords, and every weapon he could imagine. There was even an option to buy a gun that looked powerful, but unfortunately, his points were too low. Fortunately, there was still a weapon that cost exactly 10 points. It was a light and fast elven dagger. This small dagger crafted by elves granted the user a 10% increase in speed and a 15% increase in strength. Although fragile, it was incredibly sharp. Without hesitation, he bought it. As soon as the dagger materialized in his hand, he felt his stats increase significantly. It was incomparable to the typical goblin weapons. He was sure that if he struck a vital point with it, it could be an instant death. But that was enough daydreaming for today, as he realized he hadn't seen Kelia anywhere. So he asked the system where she was. The system replied that due to the host's rebirth, some details of the timeline had changed. In this timeline, Kelia had not been captured by the goblins and continued living happily in the village. This was a surprise, but a welcome one, as it seemed he had fulfilled his promise and was grateful for the unexpected turn of events. In that case, he no longer had any concerns. With his mind now clear, he focused on what lay ahead, revenge. But first, he had to escape and survive. He immediately headed toward the exit, knowing that the narrowest passage would be his best option. The outer entrance was smaller, meaning the guards would be relatively weaker. With this in mind, he moved quickly and silently, and Lin Tian advanced through the cave. His senses were sharpened, and just as he expected, as he approached the exit, he could already hear someone outside. By their attire, they seemed to be knights of the Sacred Order, and he quickly hid in the shadows and began to listen to gather more information. Fortunately, with nothing to do, they got bored easily and started chatting. And just as Lin Tian had thought, this knight expected that any goblin coming out of this small entrance would be trash, and therefore believed they could crush it with a single hammer blow. But hunting goblins was not their only priority because, according to Lord Lauder's orders, any girl trying to escape in the chaos was to be killed, and they definitely couldn't allow this to reach the village, so they would also dispose of the body instantly and kill any witnesses. This talk cemented Lin Tian's belief that everyone in that damn Sacred Order was rotten to their core. They even killed innocent people of their own kind, let alone a goblin like him. He had no choice but to fight. With this resolution, he covered his nose and tried to imitate the voice of a woman in distress, asking for help. This instantly attracted one of the knights, who thought about the reward the Lord would give for killing a straggler. He approached the cave entrance with a false smile. As the knight approached, he then called out, assuring the supposed woman not to be afraid, and claimed that he was there to take her back. But instead of finding a woman, the knight found a dagger plunging deeply into his brain, killing him instantly. With this, Lin Tian made his first kill. One of the remaining hunters noticed that his companion wasn't moving, and wondered why he was taking so long to return. Maybe he was scared, so he decided to approach to check. But just as he got closer, Lin Tian appeared from the shadows. The man tried to prepare for a fight, but was too surprised. Therefore, Lin Tian easily pushed this weakling that moment. Even as the guy was in mid-fall, Lin Tian was already there, ready to send him to the other world. But the man's armor saved him from a fatal blow. Nevertheless, his armor couldn't make up for his lack of skill, and he ended up hitting the ground hard, sweating profusely, as he realized he was face to face with death. Desperate, he began to beg for his life, kneeling in front of Lin Tian, crying, and showing pictures of his family, thinking that since this goblin could speak the human language, maybe he would have empathy. Lin Tian, however, only found his actions pathetic. The fact that he understood the human language did not mean he had human empathy, especially after having killed the man's companion without batting an eye. Still, he let the man speak, curious to see how far he would go. The guy continued pleading, explaining that he was only following orders, that he was forced to be there. To show his sincerity, he said he would give him his gold coins, and if that wasn't enough, he promised to bring him fresh and juicy human girls later. This only enraged Lin Tian further, and now he regretted letting the man talk about his family. The offer to traffic humans disgusted him, especially knowing the man had a daughter. So as soon as the guy tried to show him London's special technique, Lin Tian didn't hesitate to demonstrate his own form of ruthless justice, severing the man's head from his body, with the head rolling on the ground and the pendant on the ground. He felt sorry for the man's family, but understood that sometimes you have to root out the weeds before they spread. Some evils are better eradicated quickly and completely. But his attention was then diverted by a voice coming from the forest. It was undoubtedly Lutter, and they were checking on the guards. Without further delay, Lin Tian stripped the guard, put on his clothes, and sneaked away, promising to see Lutter and Priya soon. A few moments later, Lutter and Aya arrived at the scene, confused about what had happened to their guards. The cut was clean and quick. This could not have been the work of a normal goblin. Aya suggested that a goblin capable of killing both guards must be a mutant, and letting it escape was not a good sign, which enraged Lear even more, who kicked one of the corpses in frustration, furious that those guards couldn't handle a mutant goblin. Priya, on the other hand, licked her lips, her sadistic excitement barely contained, as the idea of getting her hands on such a unique specimen for her experiments excited her greatly. A few moments later, night fell. The moon illuminated the forest, giving it an eerie glow, as we saw Lintian panting, relieved to have survived. He had been running non-stop until he was exhausted, but he couldn't afford to let his guard down now, so he tried to recover as quickly as possible to continue his journey. As he ate, his thoughts turned to the Holy Knights and how much they hated goblins, deciding to treat them the same brutal way that goblins did. Improve their characteristics through mating and devouring, enhancing their own values, and cultivating stronger future generations. Lintian's was full of revenge, and in this life, he wanted every man to live with his only extravagant desire being death, and every woman to moan. He immediately assumed it was one of Lutter's minions, still hunting, a figure in the bush. With this, the other party stumbled over a stone, which fortunately made it easier to realize it was a goblin, and one that spoke as well. However, with his momentum already in motion, he couldn't do anything other than clumsily fall with her, landing awkwardly on top, and the next thing he saw was a clear view of her voluptuous body, an unexpected sight for him. But he didn't mind that, as his mind was filled with questions, wondering why the hell there was a female goblin appearing now, since he had always understood that goblins were only males, reproducing by mating with other creatures. But her presence defied that belief. However, with his eyes darting around in confusion, the female goblin assumed he was about to do something bad, so she quickly sat up and begged him not to hurt her, explaining that she was only looking for water. But this made him think even more, wondering how this goblin could speak in full sentences just like him. To find answers, he chose to use his evaluation ability on her. Although her level was not remarkable, her general information revealed surprising titles such as Fallen God, Pure Soul, and God's Blessing. But what shocked him the most was a hidden characteristic that stated that if a male goblin united with her, he would become the legendary goblin god. The realization struck him like lightning. This female goblin had immense power and potential, something he never imagined could exist. And now, there she was, trembling before him, unaware of the extraordinary fate she carried, since he could immediately ascend to divinity if he could mate with her. But that's only if he could mate with her. But with his growing intent, it only made the goblin girl feel more uncomfortable, leading her to assume that he didn't believe her story. So, trembling, she tried to convince him again that she had truly been sent by the goblin leader to fetch water. If she couldn't do it, she would be beaten to death by the clan leader, and her expression said it all. So he immediately apologized, explaining that it was not his intention to scare her. To show his sincerity, he patted her on the back and, in a calm voice, assured her that it was okay. But he didn't do it entirely out of compassion. He simply didn't want her to cry anymore, as it could attract Lutter's minions. But this surprised the girl, as she realized that he could speak as well. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, which made Lintian laugh at how cute she was. But this was understandable, as goblins generally couldn't talk, and she probably rarely spoke with other members of the tribe. Finding someone like him must have felt like a gift from heaven for her. However, his train of thought was interrupted once more when he noticed the goblin girl clinging to his cloak. She did this because she felt safe with him, as it was the first time she had encountered such a kind goblin. Other goblins only hit and scolded her. It was the first time someone had cared for her so carefully. With this, she suggested that if he had nowhere to go, he could come back with her instead. This surprised Lintian, and her words meant that he was almost close to first base to becoming a goblin god. He immediately expressed his interest in joining her, although he wasn't sure if Lutter and the others had caught up. Being with her was the top priority, but mating there wasn't an option either, as he couldn't risk Lutter's men finding him with his pants down in the middle of action with a goblin. So he set his priority on finding a place to stay first, which was what the goblin girl had suggested. Meanwhile, the goblin girl, on the other hand, blushed as she noticed how strong his arm felt pressing against her shoulder, so she immediately looked at Lintian and agreed to take him to her village. With this, his eyes lit up and a smile appeared on his face. It was like killing two birds with one stone. Not only was he going to disregard the search for subordinates, but he was also going to become the goblin god in the process. It wasn't long before they arrived at the goblin camp, and as expected, the new face put everyone on high alert. And he wasn't just new, he was also dressed in clothes that humans usually wore, something the goblins had never seen before, making them think he was some kind of traveling circus, raising their tension even more. But despite the danger, Lin Tian couldn't help but admire the size of the goblin tribe, which convinced him even more that this was the perfect place to start expanding his power. With a calm attitude, he explained to the goblins that he wanted to speak with their chief, since he was there to join them. This only agitated the goblins more, who thought that a stranger had no right to see the chief whenever he wanted. So instead of fulfilling his request, they were considering killing him and sending him to see the chief after that. But the girl couldn't let that happen. She immediately stepped in, trying to convince the goblins not to do anything, assuring them that he wasn't a bad goblin at all. The commotion attracted the attention of the chief, who surprised Lin Tian by appearing with a staff adorned with human bones and a completely different appearance from the goblins Lin Tian had seen before. Unlike the previous goblin chief under whom he had been, and not only that, his level wasn't to be taken lightly. It matched Lutter's, and his title was somewhat concerning, as he held the title of breeding machine along with a divine blessing, and his global combat power was 200, which kept Lin Tian on alert, but he couldn't back down now. With determination, he went ahead with his plan, determined to make this village his own. The goblin leader, after making his appearance, slowly approached Lin Tian, observed the goblin female, and asked if she had brought the stranger to the camp. The girl, full of worry, confirmed that she had brought Lin Tian, explaining that he had nowhere else to go. With his terrifying red eyes, the leader praised the girl for her good work, but then, to everyone's surprise, he ordered the other goblins to capture Lin Tian with the intention of killing him and eating him. The goblins, excited at the prospect of a meal, jumped for joy, pushed the girl aside, and pointed their weapons at Lin Tian. Lin Tian, without losing his composure, drew his weapon and ordered them to stop. He assured them he had the ability to create weapons, and that joining his tribe would make them stronger. The iron knife in his hands immediately caught the attention of the leader, who ordered the goblins to stop and hurried towards Lin Tian, bringing his nose close to Lin Tian's face, claiming he sensed deception. He wanted to know what kind of weapons he could create using his knowledge of modern technology. Lot explained that he could manufacture iron weapons as long as they found iron ore. He promised that, with enough time, he could create weapons more powerful than a knife. Lot thought to himself that the goblin shaman spoke with considerable clarity. It seemed that the higher the level of the goblin, the more intelligent it became. Noticing the leader's doubt, Lot emphasized that with iron weapons, the tribe would have a chance to defeat humans or other monsters. The goblins began discussing, recognizing that possessing iron weapons would be incredibly beneficial. They believed that goblins, compared to humans, were weak creatures, but with iron weapons, they could move north to capture girls for mating. Faced with the immense benefits of iron weapons, the leader agreed to give Lot an opportunity. He demanded that Lot find iron ore and create weapons within 3 days, or he would be devoured. Not just him, but the female goblin would also be eaten. Upon hearing this, the girl became extremely worried. After making his demands, the leader and the goblin horde left, comforting the girl. Lot looked at the leader with a touch of anger, judging him. Lot repressed his rage, knowing he couldn't defeat the leader with his current strength. He needed to use this time to create weapons and become stronger. The next morning at dawn, Lot led the tribe's goblins to search for iron ore. Now it was night, and the moonlight made the forest seem terrifying. The female goblin, Gobu, was also with them and was incredibly exhausted, claiming she couldn't walk any further since she had been walking all day and was completely drained. She received no help from her people, who instead beat her, calling her ugly and threatening to kill her if she didn't find the iron ore. She kept pleading, but the abuse didn't stop. They wanted to kill her at that moment for being lazy. Unable to bear the scene, Lot picked up a stone and threw it at one of the goblins' heads. This action made them look at him with angry eyes. Lot explained that he wanted them to follow him and help find the iron ore, not fight. He said he would show them what iron ore looked like, and that if they wanted to live, they should go to the valley ahead and bring back some iron ore. If they didn't, he would kill them on the spot. Lot then drew his knife and looked at them with a terrifying expression. The threat frightened them, and they imagined that he would kill them with the iron weapon. So they ran off to search for iron ore, not without first threatening to kill him if he didn't fulfill the creation of weapons. Lot thought to himself that sooner or later, they would kill him after obtaining the iron tools. The task at hand was to become stronger. While looking at Gobu's information, a notice about mating with her to become a goblin god caught his attention. Lot decided it was time to do adult things. Seeing Gobu cry, Lot told her to stop. He sat down next to her and asked if she wanted to follow him. He promised to protect her, feed her, give her a warm home, and ensure that no one would bother her. The girl was confused by these words, asking if he was telling the truth. Looking at her sincerely, Lot affirmed that everything he said was true. However, he was too weak at that moment. To avoid further abuse, he needed to become stronger, and Gobu was the only one who could help him. The confused girl asked what she could do to help him become stronger. Laten felt a bit embarrassed, but said that if they mated, he would become stronger. This made the girl's face turn red. She looked at Laten with suspicion, questioning whether he was telling the truth, as she had never tried this before. Latine also felt a bit uncomfortable bringing up the topic, but reassured her that everything would be fine, and that he would help her if she wished. Without waiting for her response, Latine kissed her softly on the lips, and then laid her on the ground. The embarrassed girl accepted, saying that he could be the father of her children. Then timid sounds resonated in the air, and at the same time, notifications appeared one after another, informing him that the mating had elevated his current level to level 7, and the sound of the enhancement echoed. The level increase also boosted his attributes. After some time, Latine's body began to change. His muscles became more defined. He was now at level 7, with 40 HP, 10 strength, 6 defense, and a total strength of 65. Latine was surprised by the change in his body, thinking that if he continued like this, he could defeat the goblin leader. Latine warmly caressed Gobu's head, telling her that she was now his wife and that he would protect her forever. The girl blushed and, exhausted, thanked Latine, calling him a good person. At that moment, a cry for help caught their attention. Looking in that direction, they saw a goblin running toward them in fear, followed by a large wolf. What caught Latine's attention was the iron ore in the goblin's hand. He hadn't expected to find iron ore here, but before he could get it, he had to solve this problem first. He immediately took out his knife and asked Gobu to wait there. Gobu looked at him confidently, reminding him to be careful. For Latine, this wolf was a test of his strength. The wolf was about to catch the unfortunate goblin who was desperately trying to escape, but Latine suddenly appeared wielding his sharp iron knife, charging directly at the large wolf. The fleeing goblin was completely astonished by this action, and then was filled with fear as he watched Latine kill the wolf with a single blow. In the eyes of the goblin, Latine had become a terrifying figure. When Latine asked him to give him the iron ore, the goblin handed it over immediately, overwhelmed by fear. Holding the iron ore in his hand, Latine was delighted by the high quality of the ore. They now needed more of it, and after returning, he would forge weapons for the goblins and the tribe. 2 days had passed since the previous night, and with the help of other goblins, Latine managed to craft a spear with an iron blade. It wasn't pretty, but for him and the goblins it was a great achievement. The goblins couldn't believe that Latine could create an iron weapon, although they wondered if it would really work. To demonstrate its effectiveness, Latine thrust the spear's tip into the hard skull of Crocodile Wolf as expected. The tip easily pierced through, leaving the goblins astonished. The goblin that Latine had saved earlier was incredibly excited, pointing to the Crocodile Wolf's corpse and claiming to have seen Latine kill it in seconds, using the iron weapon. The other goblins agreed that the iron spear was much more powerful than stone ones. While the goblins discussed, Latine held the spear high and asked if they wanted weapons like it. Without hesitation, the goblins excitedly shouted yes, hailing him as a god. Only one goblin was not happy, the goblin leader, who was furious that a newcomer had stolen his respect. The leader caught their attention by striking his skull-topped staff against the ground. With threatening red eyes, he admitted that Latine wasn't lying. Creating an iron weapon was a miracle, but it wasn't enough to stay in the tribe. He demanded that Latine create 50 iron spears in 2 days. After making his demand, the leader immediately left. The other goblins disagreed with the condition, but didn't dare object, feeling that the leader was too cruel. They decided to help Latine complete the task. Latine wasn't surprised by the condition. He laughed confidently, feeling that earning the respect of the other goblins was a good step forward in his plan. On the day of delivery, Latine had completed the 50 iron spears, and the tribe's goblins were happy that he could stay. With the same threatening look and sly smile, the leader said he was very pleased that Latine had completed the task and could stay. To celebrate Latine's incorporation into the tribe, the leader decided to organize a feast and demanded that everyone participate. The goblins immediately began dancing and celebrating. The feast was held quickly around the bonfire. Gobu cut a piece of pork and brought it to Latine, as it was the best part, and she wanted him to eat it. Latine happily accepted, but after a while of eating, a sharp pain struck him. Latine fell to the ground in agony, and Gobu was terrified. It was evident that Latine had been poisoned. The poisoner was none other than the leader, who approached Latine with an evil smile. He told Latine he was too stupid, claiming to know his true intentions, and that those who challenged his authority only had one fate, hell. Before Latine could speak, the leader grabbed Gobu's hair and dragged her toward him. The leader said he saw that Latine cared a lot about her, so he would make him experience the pain of watching her die in front of him. A red line appeared on Gobu's neck as the leader's claws dug into her. The leader wanted to crush Latine's arrogance and make him suffer. In Gobu's terrified eyes, a red stream of blood gushed out, but it wasn't Gobu's blood, it was the leader's, as his arm had been cut off. Latine had done it. The leader, fearful, asked how Latine could move after being poisoned. Latine smiled and said the leader was an idiot. When facing a villain like him, he was always alert, and was only pretending. In reality, Latine knew he was going to be poisoned. Because the system had warned him, the leader, now incredibly angry, had no choice but to fight. He had lost an arm, so his fighting power had decreased. He used the bone chain in his hand to attack Latine. Latine also attacked quickly. With his speed, he easily dodged the attack. Latine jumped, and his iron knife aimed at the leader's head, who was killed. The goblins, seeing that their leader was dead, were terrified. Latine looked at them and declared that he would be their new leader. He would guide them to become a powerful goblin tribe, and they would always have meat to eat. Latine embraced Gobu and raised his knife high, declaring his supremacy over the tribe. With Latine's strength, the other goblins easily accepted him as their leader. After all, they were simple-minded creatures who only cared about meat and mating, and the reward Latine gave for their loyalty was the leader's corpse. With permission, they immediately revealed their vicious nature, devouring the corpse in a cruel and savage manner, which made Latine feel disgusted, but that was the reality of life. What mattered now was building his tribe, raising the next generation of goblins to make them stronger. This was just the first step in his revenge. Amid the chaos, no one noticed a pair of eyes watching everything from afar. It was a golden-haired elf who, witnessing the scene, wondered what was happening under the dim light of the moon in the strange world. Among the ominous shadows of the trees, strange-looking houses appeared. A figure moved with incredible speed, taking only a few leaps to enter a brightly lit house. What really stood out was the horrifying scene below. Countless shriveled and blue goblin corpses hung from large bones. If Lin Tian had witnessed this, he would have been terrified. The elf stopped in front of a house, the one that had secretly observed Lin Tian's tribe. The princess of this elf tribe, Kasana, was seen by an elf guard who was glad to see her return. Ignoring the guard, Kasana immediately entered. The guard was worried, wanting her to stop, as if there was something inside she shouldn't see, but Kasana didn't care. She said she had important news for her mother, and burst through the door. Kasana entered and shouted, "Mother, I have something very important to report. There's strange activity in the goblin tribe of the Eastern Forest." But the scene inside left her completely bewildered. Elves are known as a noble race with brave warriors, but here was a promiscuous elf with her breasts exposed, and her revealing attire enjoying the special attention of two men. Kasana blushed, stammering apologies and saying she had something to do. Before she could turn around, the queen's voice echoed, demanding Kasana to stop and asking what urgent matter had brought her there so hastily. Kasana's eyes became serious, and she once again mentioned the goblin tribe in the forest. The queen didn't seem interested, considering goblins to be weak, dirty, and low-level creatures. Kasana quickly explained, "I found the remains of a bear in the demon forest, completely chewed up. There are signs of a struggle, many goblin footprints on the ground. It's probably the goblins from the demon forest who killed the bear. That giant bear is practically the strongest creature in the forest. Those goblins shouldn't be able to kill it." Her voice became anxious. "A few days ago I saw a goblin leader was killed by a young man. Goblin, I'm worried that the bear's death might be related to that goblin." The queen was slightly surprised to hear about the new leader but didn't seem too concerned. What interested her was the growing number of goblins. The queen snapped her fingers, signaling the man to continue serving her, and ordered Kasana to lead a group to eliminate the goblins, but she told him not to kill them all, leave some alive. This wasn't out of kindness. The queen wanted to collect the hearts of the living goblins to prepare a tonic for the elven men of her tribe. Of course, Kasana knew the effects of this potion. Hearing this, his face flushed again. Due to Kasana's diligence, the queen offered him a man for the night, and even asked if he had any special requests. Kasana was startled. This reward embarrassed him. He said he had to review some things that night, and quickly took his leave of his mother. Back at Lin Tian's camp, the goblins were in a heated discussion. On the ground lay a map of the elven tribe, meticulously researched by Lin Tian's subordinates. The tribe consisted of 30 houses, all located high up in the trees. Lin Tian praised his subordinate, promising him 2 elven girls as a reward after defeating the tribe. He told everyone to prepare iron weapons. Upon hearing the reward of 2 elven girls, the goblin grew excited and rushed to inform everyone to prepare their weapons. Lin Tian's expression wasn't one of joy at the prospect of attacking another tribe. This was a world where strength determined survival. If he didn't turn his tribe into a powerful force, they would be destroyed sooner or later. Lin Tian carefully analyzed the situation. There were 30 houses in the village, and if each housed 2 elves, there would be a total of 60 elves. Adding the 10 elves guarding the mine, the tribe would have at least 70 people. Looking back since the death of their leader, Lin Tian had led the goblins in weapon making and monster hunting, enhancing their skills. The goblins under Lin Tian's command swept through the forest like a tide, massacring countless monsters, which they then devoured. By eating them, all the goblins gained new abilities, such as fang attacks and skills that hardened their skin like stone, adding 15 points to their defense. Other abilities included silent movements and poison production. Not all goblins gained abilities by eating monsters, but the tribe's overall strength had improved. Some outstanding goblins had reached level 18 with high stats. Combined with simple iron spears and armor, they had a total strength of 250. The average strength of the goblins in the tribe was now 200, but the collective strength of the elven tribe was still significantly higher, which worried Lin Tian. This was a dangerous battle, and Lin Tian wanted to be thoroughly prepared. He decided to use the simulation system to find an effective attack method. The simulation began. You lead a large goblin army to attack the elven tribe, confident in your victory. When the elves ambushed you, the goblins fell into a trap and were slain. You were captured by the elven leader and hung in the demonic forest as a warning to other goblins. Simulation results. You thought it was perfect, but in reality, you were under someone else's control. Score, 0. Tian was surprised at having captured Kasana so easily. He commented that he had arrived at the perfect moment, and with coldness, ordered his subordinates to capture all the elves. Kasana woke up from an unknown liquid, her figure soaked, revealing lines of astonishing beauty, and her dazed eyes evoking wicked thoughts. The goblins looked at her with lust. Their desire was undeniable, waiting for the opportune moment. He grabbed Kasana, recognizing the undeniable attraction of the elf's body, which unleashed a frantic excitement among the goblins. Capturing her would give them an opportunity to defeat the elf queen. Kasana trembled and tried to intimidate Tien, calling him a coward. She declared herself the princess of the elves and questioned why he dared to kidnap her and threaten her people. She claimed that the kindness of her mother had allowed Lampen and his goblins to survive, or else they would have been eradicated a long time ago. She warned that if he dared to touch her, the Goblin Queen would annihilate all the goblins present. Lampen only mocked her threats, threw her to the ground, and sneered at her claims about the kindness of the Elf Queen. The goblins around him laughed. He pointed to a goblin, saying that what he had heard from his subordinate contradicted Kasana's narrative. He claimed that his subordinates might be foolish, but they never lied. Under Kasana's terrified gaze, Lampen revealed that he knew her true purpose, to annihilate all the goblins in the forest. He said that the Elf Queen wanted to keep some goblins alive, not out of kindness, but for another reason he wouldn't bother to ask about. He declared that that night he would lead his tribe to find out. Lampen ordered the goblins to feast on the dead elves and absorb their abilities. The insane goblins roared with joy while Kasana was consumed by fear. Since his betrayal by humans, Lampen had become cold and cruel to his enemies, a survival tactic it seemed. He looked at Kasana with an emotionless expression, announcing that he would personally take care of her. Kasana was petrified, emitting only muffled sounds, and then a scream that echoed through the forest. It seemed that Lampen had done something truly horrible. The system announced that Lamtien had reached level 30, gaining 50 HP, 10 strength, 10 defense, and the skills of invisibility and night vision. From the elf village, moans of pleasure and pleas of exhaustion could be heard from the elf queen's house. Inside, the queen felt heartbroken because her wicked desires were not satisfied. She regretted not having captured enough goblins last time to make tonics for these men. 3 men were collapsing from exhaustion around her. Suddenly, she remembered Kasana and asked if she had returned. An elf quickly informed her that Kasana had gone on a mission and had not returned despite the time having already passed. She suggested sending a group to help Kasana, which would also provide more goblins to kill and improve the combat skills of the tribe. The queen gave full authority to send people to help Kasana and kill the goblins. A voice broke the silence, announcing that Kasana would not return today. The words sent a shiver of fear through the group, a clear realization that they were under attack. The elf was about to draw his weapon to fight when sharp iron arrows flew, killing the unfortunate man instantly. Elven Queen, with a mix of skills and luck, managed to catch an arrow but was terrified by the sudden appearance of goblins in her home. Len and his goblins entered through the window, announcing that he had captured Kasana and that she would soon be expecting a child of his. He called the Elven Queen his mother. Next, in the tribe of goblins, the sky is high with plenty of sunshine. The landscape is incredibly beautiful. Kasana and the Elf Queen are together. Kasana is happy to see her mother again, but now she is captured and can be said to have no hope for her future. The queen hugged her daughter and apologized for underestimating the goblins. She clearly did not expect the strength of the goblins to surpass that of the elves in this way. Currently, only women and children remain in the goblin tribe, and they no longer have the ability to defend themselves and protect the lineage of the elves. The most worrisome thing at this moment is that the beautiful elf girls who have been captured by the goblins as slaves will now be used as reproductive tools. The queen realizes that they have become slaves, and from now on, they can only try to survive in the goblin tribe. Despite all this, the beautiful queen asks Kasana not to lose hope. At that moment, Lintian appeared next to the prison. He told the two beautiful elves to obediently wait to have children. He would provide them with their daily food, but if either of them dared to cause trouble, he would kill them both without mercy. The elf queen is very obedient and seems to have accepted her fate. She said she understood but has a request. Looking at the young elves who are innocently playing with the young goblins, the elf queen said that they were her children. She begged our boy to let her take care of those children. Currently, our protagonist is a goblin, but he was once human and understands the bond between mother and children. Knowing this, he is now a bit indecisive about the queen's proposal. At the same time, the system also appears with a new mission, being the mission of maternal love. At this moment, Gobu called Lintian. She said that she couldn't take care of all the children alone, so she suggested letting the queen take care of the children. Lintian understands that these children are the future of the goblin tribe, and after they grow up, they will increase the tribe's strength. So, Lintian accepted the elf queen's request. At this moment, our boy also checked his strength. He currently meets the requirements to improve himself with additional blood statistics, plus 120 strength, plus 130 defense. Our boy was surprised when he saw that he met the upgrade conditions. Immediately, the remaining statistics automatically turned into attribute points. Lintian smiled softly and decided to continue the path of strengthening by mating with strong girls. His current strength can already challenge the leader, so after these elves give birth, he will go see Lair to take revenge. Another month quickly passed in the goblin camp. There were cries of babies. The first children were born. By some miracle, all the children born have the appearance of a goblin. Their ugliness also frightened their mothers, who refused to accept the children as their own. But that's okay, as goblins are creatures with superior vitality. Lintian wanted to know how many children were born. Gobu calculated for a moment and then replied that there were around 30 to 40 children. The conversation was interrupted by Kasana's scream, which worried Lintian, since the elf is pregnant with his child. Our boy quickly appeared at the location of Kasana and the elf queen. Kasana is about to give birth, and the elf queen is by her side, full of concern for how things are going with Kasana. The queen quickly pleaded with Lintian to help Kasana, because it is her first time giving birth, and she seems about to die. Lintian knows what's happening, so he asks Gobu to help, so that Kasana can give birth. Watching Lintian's actions, the elf queen is very surprised to see that a goblin like him is willing to help, but unlike the queen, Kasana is angry because Lintian is there. She asks him to leave quickly, as she doesn't want him to touch her. Upon hearing this, Lintian gets angry and tells Kasana to shut up because this is his child. After some time, Lintian finished the job, and Kasana is no longer in danger. Gobu praised our boy as an extremely talented person for saving Kasana, but Lintian thinks it was just a minor matter. Kasana is currently sleeping due to exhaustion and is surrounded by young goblins. But then something happened. A scream caught Lintian's attention in the other direction. A beautiful elf who had just given birth was tied up, and beside her were two adult goblins who wanted to have children. It seems that these two goblins didn't care about the elf's weak resistance. But don't worry, because their actions were paid for with their own lives. Our boy killed one goblin and coldly looked at the remaining goblin. Lintian eliminated this goblin because Lintian had ordered that, after all the elves gave birth, they should be given rest until they were fully healed, and those who violated the order would pay with their lives. Lintian ordered that from now on, the elf's food ration would be increased by an apple. These actions made the queen feel more favorably towards Lintian. The queen said that he was very different from the common goblins, and Lintian said it was just a normal action, and that the elves would be more obedient if treated better. Busy Lintian began running simulations to earn system points. At the start of the simulation, we are told that the current story is Gen's Revan with the content. You have worked hard and have captured the tribe of elves and fertilized all the elves. After a period of pregnancy, the elves gave birth to children with stronger attributes than usual. In the simulation, our boy, realizing that the strength of the tribe had increased, decided to take revenge on Oder and the others. He decided to return to the village alone and find the location of the Knights of Loder. Currently, there are 3 simulations for Lintian to choose from. The first simulation is to try to kill Loder and the others, 50 points. The second simulation is to lead the goblins to attack and annihilate the entire village, 30 points. And the third simulation is to wait for a better opportunity and continue observing because you believe it is not yet time for revenge, 10 points. Sitting by the campfire, Lintian continued thinking. He wondered if he should find them to take revenge so soon. Although Lintian's current strength can be compared to Loder's, he knows that the strength of Loder's companions should not be underestimated. With his current strength, Lintian chose option number 1, act alone and try to kill Loder and the others, 50 points. What happened next? Lintian found an opportunity, and when he found Loder alone, He ambushed him and almost managed to kill him, but a human knight appeared and rescued Loader, and our boy tragically died under that person's sword. Then Loader's group returned to the capital and never appeared again. Immediately, the simulation process ended in disastrous failure. Our boy found the Holy Knight, but there was no chance to escape. Score: 30 out of 100 points. The reward was multiplied by 30 life points. Lintian was surprised that such a level of power appeared in such a remote place, and did not expect that Loader's group would leave the village and never return, which means that once they leave, it will be difficult to find them, and his revenge will be extremely difficult. Right now, hatred has taken over Lintian's mind. Knowing that he doesn't have much time, he wants revenge quickly. Our boy made a decision and decided to go to human territory. As we know, our boy is currently the leader of the Goblin tribe, but besides him, Gobu is the most respected by other goblins, and decided to put her in charge of the tribe for a few days. Upon hearing this, the Elf Queen thought this was crazy. If our boy reached human territory and was discovered by them, he would be arrested and killed. Our boy sincerely didn't care much. He said that he held a grudge against the humans and that he had to take revenge. Faced with this decision, the Elf Queen offered to help Lintian by using invisibility magic on him, helping him not to be discovered by the humans. Upon hearing this, Lintian chuckled. This was what he wanted. He said he didn't expect her to care so much about his safety. The queen used magic and said that she was only afraid that after Lintian died, the other goblins would rebel and treat the elves with cruelty. Only when Lintian returns safe and sound will they be safe. Lintian only felt that the Elf Queen was very cunning and knew how to survive. Watching Lintian leave the tribe, Gobu agreed to help him take care of the tribe and hoped he would return safe and sound. After all this, we see how Lintian arrived at Wangmin City, where several soldiers walked along the roads, patrolling the entire city. But we see that in the dark corner, Lintian was hiding from everyone while observing everything. He thought that the patrols had become so strict, and the city's defense was at its peak, which made him wonder if the Holy Sword had already arrived in the city. But Lintian denied this, because he had been looking for news about it for a long time, but could not hear anything related to it, which was really strange to him. As the scene changes, we see Lintian arrive at a circular area within the city, where several people were sitting around a fountain. When he turned around, he saw that several humans were gathered and reading some kind of poster. They were the humans from the adventure team, indicating that the sword warriors were at the platinum level. After looking at the ranking, Lintian wondered if Loader had become stronger again, because he actually occupied the first place on the entire adventurer list. Lintian began to move away from the crowd, while thinking that he had to get more clues about him. Otherwise, his revenge plan would come to nothing. Having been a human himself, he knows that the best place to gather information is a tavern. To his surprise, even before entering the tavern, he hears a familiar voice. A cunning smile spreads across his face. Inside, besides Loader and the temple knights, there is also Yaa, who are happily drinking together. One of the knights raises his cup and expresses gratitude to Freya and Loader for saving him from a monkey-like monster. With outstretched arms, Freya says that this is Captain Loader's victory, and that she would not have been able to help without his exceptional skills. Another man argues that the monster was too weak, and that the fact that the knight couldn't defeat it shows his weakness. This sarcastic comment angers the knight, who tells the man that his story doesn't concern him, and orders him to leave. A heated argument ensues, and they are on the verge of a fight. The tense situation quickly dispelled by the tavern owner, he reveals that the dragon Alan is currently in its breeding season, has been kidnapping livestock and humans to eat, and suggests that the two go to defeat it instead of causing trouble in the tavern. These were the words of the tavern owner, which also catch the attention of our boy. The tavern keeper feels a sense of concern, as if the dragon attacks this city. Reinforcements from the capital will not arrive in time. Even if all the adventurers in the city unite, they would not be able to withstand the attack of those ferocious dragons. Finally, he says that disaster seems to be looming over the city. These words tense the atmosphere in the tavern, but Lair breaks the silence with a laugh, saying that a few dragons are nothing to worry about. He himself reveals something to all of them, which is that a sacred knight is on the way here. Loader confidently introduces the sacred knight as his master. Once she arrives, she will join them to defeat the dragons. The king will not need to send his army, and after the situation is resolved, their group will return to the capital with the saint. This news excites the crowd, who are surprised to learn that Loader's master is a sacred knight. They feel safe knowing that a sacred knight will help them defeat the dragons. If this succeeds, Loader will become the hero of the city. Flattered by the praise, Loader stands up proudly and toasts to everyone celebrating the arrival of the sacred knight and their imminent victory over the dragons. While everyone drinks happily, our boy has a different plan that he needs to execute to take advantage of this opportunity. Our boy stands up, pays his bill, and leaves. His departure catches Loader's attention. Unknowingly, Loder asks about Lin, leaves, and invites him to have a drink with him and his people. Lintian turns his head and looks at Loder, saying that they will have many opportunities to drink together in the future. He then leaves, catching Loder's and his men's attention, provoking their anger. As the scene changes, we see that the town is preparing to receive the saint, and the whole town joyfully celebrates her arrival. Inside a church, a woman with blonde hair is praying. Loder stands behind her and politely addresses his master, informing her that the dragons are wreaking havoc everywhere and are approaching the town. Now, no one dares to go outside as the dragons might attack the town. The woman takes up her weapon and stands up. It is worth mentioning that she is a beautiful woman with captivating blonde hair. Her silver armor gives her an imposing, yet beautiful appearance. The saint asks Loder about the preparations she had asked for. Loder reports that he has prepared 10 crossbows for hunting dragons, and has placed them at the highest points in the city. Upon hearing this, the woman seems pleased, and tells Loder to arrange everything well, as any mistake would be a great shame. The woman steps out of the crowd below, immediately causing a commotion. It is the first time they see the sacred knight. They praise her beauty and wonder what man could win her heart. They all think she is an unattainable existence. Even the king would not dare to express an opinion on her actions. The woman looks at the crowd and worries about the situation, as it is very dangerous and unnecessary to gather so many people here. She quickly orders the knights to disperse the crowd. However, it is no longer necessary to disperse the crowd, because the commotion catches the attention of the dragon. Wasting no time, the dragon charges at the town, terrifying everyone. An unfortunate person is captured by the dragon. Upon seeing this, the woman anxiously announces that this is only a scout dragon, and once it appears, it will be followed by the group of dragons to attack them. The girl orders Lear to take his men to the wall and prepare to fight outside the city. On a cliff, a goblin runs and informs his leader that the dragons are coming. Based on what he observed, there are many guards on the wall, and the goblin asks what he should do next. The leader tells him to remain silent and wait, as it is not the time to act. Clearly, the one this goblin calls leader is Lintian, who has brought his entourage here. He is waiting for the dragons to inflict damage on the city. Then, when that happens, it will be his opportunity to seek the revenge he has long desired.